Los Angeles, October 1960. Flashes from speed graphic cameras blazed like lightning on the red carpet in front of Grauman's Chinese theater. John Wayne's new film, The Alamo, was having its grand premiere. Duke, as he was known, was tall and imposing, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his white scarf standing out against his chest. His hair was prematurely gray from years of horseback riding in the Texas sun, his smile broad, but his eyes held a hint of the wariness of a man who had seen enough. The crowd cheered. "Duke! Duke!" He waved, signed posters, and shook hands with fans. But amidst the clamor, John Wayne paused. Near the entrance, under the glittering neon lights illuminating the words "The Alamo," sat an old wheelchair. It wasn't part of the celebration. A rusty metal cart, its wheels worn smooth, carried a young boy of about 17, thin and frail, his withered legs covered by a thin blanket. The boy's name was Tommy Harlan. Tommy didn't cheer like the others. He just sat silently, his pale blue eyes staring at Duke with a mixture of admiration and despair. Beside him sat his mother, Margaret Harlan, a widow who worked 2 shifts at the canning factory, her hair neatly tied up, revealing streaks of grey. John Wayne stopped. His tall figure seemed to obscure a corner of the red carpet. "Son, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice deep and warm, not the glamorous voice of a star, but the voice of a father, a soldier. Tommy looked up, his voice trembling. "Mr. Wayne, I had an accident when I was 12. The truck overturned on the highway. The doctor said I would never walk again, but I still dream. I dream of riding a horse like you in the movie." The crowd murmured. Some reporters raised their cameras. John Wayne didn't care. He knelt on one knee, a rare gesture for a man as large as him, to bring his eyes level with Tommy's. "Listen, boy, in the Alamo, Davy Crockett never gives up. Sit here for a moment, okay?" He stood up, whispered something to his assistant, and continued the premiere. But inside, a fire had ignited. He remembered his childhood years in Iowa, the times he had witnessed his friends' futures being stolen by illness. And he remembered the war. Though he had never actually been in battle, the roles he had played had taught him the value of resilience. The screening began. The audience applauded enthusiastically after each fight scene. But John Wayne couldn't stop thinking about the wheelchair out there. After the screening, as the crowd dispersed, John Wayne emerged. Tommy was still seated, Margaret weary but patient. Duke invited them inside the theater, where the lingering scent of cigars and champagne remained. "Which scene did you like best?" he asked Tommy as he sat down opposite him, his large hands resting on his knees. Tommy recounted each scene in detail, his voice filled with enthusiasm. He knew all of Texas history and knew that Duke had directed many of the segments himself. John Wayne listened, occasionally nodding, then asked about the boy's life. Tommy recounted. His father died in World War II, his mother struggled, and school was far away due to the lack of facilities for disabled children. "I just want to be able to stand up, even just once, to salute the flag like other boys." Duke was silent for a long time. He remembered an old friend, a wounded veteran from Guadalcanal, whom he had quietly helped. "Life isn't always fair, Tommy, but sometimes we can make it less unfair." That evening, Duke arranged for a car to take Tommy and his mother home, a small, dilapidated house in the suburbs of Los Angeles. Before parting ways, he held Tommy's hand. "I'll call tomorrow. Don't lose hope." The next morning, John Wayne wasn't filming. He called top doctors at the Mayo Clinic and an orthopedic specialist in New York. He secretly funded a comprehensive checkup for Tommy. The result? There was hope for surgery and rehabilitation with new technology from Europe. Duke didn't stop at just money. He visited Tommy's house several times, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, driving his old Ford pickup truck instead of a limousine. They talked about horses, movies, and dreams. Tommy told him about his painful nights, about being teased by his friends, about his mother crying silently. John Wayne shared his life story, the falls from horses, the wounds that never healed, but he always got back up. Pain is part of life, son, but giving up is a choice. He also invited Tommy to the film set, where the boy sat in a wheelchair watching the filming. Duke personally pushed Tommy's wheelchair, surprising the entire film crew. The morning after the premiere, John Wayne woke up in his Encino Hills mansion. California sunlight streamed through the curtains, but his mind wasn't there. He called Dr. Richard Thompson, a renowned orthopedic specialist at Presbyterian Hospital in New York, a man he'd known through quiet charity fundraising events. "Doc, I have a boy I need you to see. Not the press, not the fuss. Just a child who needs a chance." Margaret Harlan received a call from Duke's assistant that afternoon. Her voice trembled. "Mr. Wayne, do you really want to do this?" John Wayne called back in person, his voice warm and gentle. "Margaret, I don't promise a miracle cure, but I promise I'll do my best. The plane tickets are ready. We're flying tonight." Tommy sat in his wheelchair in the small living room, his heart pounding. He had never left California. "Mom, what if it fails?" Margaret hugged her son, tears streaming down her face. "Son, Duke isn't the kind of man who makes empty promises. We have to try." The black limousine arrived to pick them up at midnight, away from the press cameras. John Wayne sat waiting in his private cabin on the Pan Am flight from Los Angeles to New York. He wore a worn leather jacket, his familiar cowboy hat beside him. As Tommy was wheeled onto the plane, Duke smiled. "Hello, future Texas boy. Sit back. I'll tell you the story of the real Davy Crockett." Throughout the long flight, John Wayne recounted his life story, the hard days of working in Glendale when he was young, the times he nearly broke his neck from falling off a horse, and how he learned to get back up. Tommy listened, his eyes shining. "Mr. Wayne, have you ever been afraid?" Duke laughed loudly, his laughter echoing in the cabin. "Of course I have, son, but fear doesn't kill. Only giving up does." They landed at dawn in New York. No fans, no flashlights. Only Dr. Thompson and a discreet ambulance were waiting. At the hospital, Tommy underwent a series of tests: X-rays, neurological examinations, and measurements of muscle atrophy. The results weren't entirely optimistic, but not hopeless either. "There's hardened scar tissue in the spine," Dr. Thompson explained. "Surgery can remove some of it, combined with intensive physical therapy. But it will take at least 6 months of perseverance." John Wayne stayed in New York for 3 days, cancelling filming for the Comancheros. He sat by Tommy's bedside before the surgery, gripping the boy's hand tightly. "Listen, Tommy. In the Alamo, we defeated the Mexican army even though we were outnumbered. You will too. I'll be here." The surgery lasted 4 hours. Margaret prayed in the waiting room, while Duke paced like a caged tiger. When the doctor announced the initial success, Duke patted her on the shoulder. "You're the strongest mother I've ever met." The days following the surgery were hell for Tommy. Pain spread, and he screamed in his dreams. John Wayne didn't leave his side. He read aloud to him Western novels by Zane Grey and sang old cowboy songs in his hoarse voice. "Pain is a sign you're alive, son." Tommy returned to Los Angeles after 2 weeks. John Wayne arranged a private rehabilitation room at his home, equipped with state-of-the-art equipment imported from Switzerland. Every morning, Duke would drive his pickup truck to visit, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, bringing food prepared by his chef. Physical therapy was a grueling ordeal. The therapist, Mr. Hank, a veteran, pushed Tommy to do every millimeter of the exercise. "Lift your leg, Tommy, 1 more inch!" The boy cried out in pain, drenched in sweat. Many nights Tommy wanted to give up. "I can't do it anymore, Mr. Wayne. My legs are dead." Duke sat by the bedside, telling stories of an old friend wounded in the war. He thought he would never walk again, but he taught me that strength isn't in muscles, it's here. He pointed to his heart. "I will be with you every step of the way." At times, conflict erupted. Tommy yelled. "You're a star. Why waste your time on a disabled person like me?" John Wayne was silent for a moment, then hugged the boy tightly. "Because I was once a poor boy in Iowa, with no one to help me. And because I believe you can become a great man." Margaret found less strenuous work thanks to a secret fund from Duke. Tommy began to make small progress. His toes could move. Duke organized a little celebration, with cake and jokes, making the whole family laugh. Letters Duke sent while filming in Arizona. "Today I rode my horse thinking of you. Don't give up, Duke." After 3 months, John Wayne decided to take Tommy and his mother back to his ranch in Arizona, a vast expanse of red desert, hills, and wild horses. "The air here will be better for you than any hospital." They drove along Route 66, Duke driving his old Ford, singing folk songs. Tommy sat in the back seat, his wheelchair folded up. As they arrived at the ranch, the desert wind rushed in, carrying the scent of dry grass and freedom. Duke personally pushed Tommy's wheelchair around the stables. "This is Red, my old horse. He was injured too, but he can still run." He lifted Tommy onto the saddle, holding him close to his chest, his arms wrapped around the boy. They rode slowly through the desert at sunset, the setting sun painting the sky red. "Can you feel the wind, Tommy? That's freedom!" Tommy cried. "I've never been this close to a horse before." Duke told stories about the films he'd shot there, about his love of nature, and how he taught his children to be strong but kind. That evening around the campfire, Duke roasted beef, and Margaret spoke of her husband, a fallen soldier. Their friendship deepened. Tommy began to stand, leaning against the stable fence, and Duke was always there to support him. There was a poignant moment. Tommy stroked Red and whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Wayne, for giving me hope." News began to leak. A curious reporter took a picture of Duke pushing Tommy in a wheelchair. The headline read, "John Wayne secretly helps a disabled boy." The studio worried about damaging its hero image, and filming was delayed. Medical expenses exceeded the budget, forcing Duke to sell some of his prized horses. Duke confronted his assistant. "Do they think I'm crazy? It's my money, I'll spend it however I want." He called old donors, quietly making donations without boasting. Tommy felt guilty. "I've troubled you too much, sir." Duke laughed. "Son, helping you is the best thing I've done this year. Don't listen to the press. They know nothing about true kindness." Duke's inner conflict. He missed the pressure from Hollywood, the blockbuster movies, but chose to be with Tommy. Margaret was almost giving up from exhaustion, but Duke comforted her. "We are family now." Duke's inner conflict. He missed the pressure from Hollywood, the blockbuster movies, but chose to be with Tommy. Margaret was on the verge of giving up from exhaustion, and Duke comforted her. "We are family now." Progress slowed due to pressure, but Duke remained steadfast. "I made a promise, and Duke never breaks a promise." After 6 long months, the momentous day arrived. In the recovery room at the farm, under the Arizona sun, Tommy stood up with his crutches. Sweat dripped from his body, his legs trembled. Duke stood 3 meters away, arms outstretched, his voice warm and deep. "Walk, son. I'm here." Tommy gritted his teeth, remembering all the painful nights, all the stories Duke had told. 1, 2, 3 steps. He fell into Duke's arms. They embraced, sobbing uncontrollably. Margaret knelt, praying in thanksgiving. Duke whispered, "This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a new life." Tommy smiled through his tears. I can walk now, Duke." A heartwarming scene unfolded. The desert sunset, the joyful neighing of horses, the 3 embracing like a true family. John Wayne knew his actions had changed a life forever. After that sacred first step on the Arizona ranch, Tommy Harlan began a new chapter in his life. John Wayne didn't let him return to his old home immediately. He arranged for Tommy and his mother to stay on the ranch for another 2 months, where the fresh air and horses became the best tonic. Every morning, Duke would get up at dawn, personally brew strong black coffee, and bring it to Tommy. "Today we'll do 10 more steps, son. Tomorrow it will be 20. Tommy progressed day by day. His physical therapy sessions were no longer torture, but joy. He could walk with crutches, then gradually with just a bamboo cane. Margaret looked at her son, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how to repay Mr. Wayne. He has given us a miracle." Duke only shook his head, his voice warm and gentle. "Margaret, kindness needs no repayment. It arises and spreads on its own. That's what I learned from true soldiers." Upon returning to Los Angeles, John Wayne secretly bought a smaller but more comfortable house in an accessible area for Tommy. He also sponsored a local rehabilitation center, where Tommy began helping other children in wheelchairs. The first time Tommy stood before a group of 5 children, his voice trembling, he said, "You thought you'd never walk again, didn't you? I thought so too. But a big man taught me that legs aren't everything. The heart and will are what matter." Duke often visited after tiring days of filming. He wore his familiar flannel shirt, sat with Tommy in the backyard, and told stories about Hollywood. "They think I'm just a tough cowboy, but I'm lonely in the crowd sometimes, son." Tommy shared his new dreams in return, to become an engineer designing assistive devices for people with disabilities. Duke smiled. "That's a good idea. I'll introduce you to some friends at the studio that has a mechanical workshop." There were minor conflicts. Tommy sometimes felt pressured because people saw him as the boy Duke saved. He argued with his mother. "I don't want people to pity me." Duke sat down beside him, placing his large hand on his shoulder. "They don't pity you. They admire you, and I'm proud of you. Don't let other people define who you are." On afternoons at the film set, Duke invited Tommy to watch the filming of The Sons of Katie Elder. The boy, now a healthier teenager, got to sit in the director's chair, even offering small suggestions on a horseback riding scene. Their friendship deepened, becoming like that of father and son. In 1962, John Wayne's career reached its peak with many major projects. The press began to delve deeper into his relationship with Tommy. One article headlined, "Duke and the Wheelchair Boy, a charity story or a gimmick?" Duke was furious but didn't react publicly. He called Tommy, "Don't read that. We know the truth." Pressure from the studio made Duke's schedule incredibly busy. At one point, he had to film in Mexico for 3 months straight. During that time, Duke sent letters and audio recordings weekly. His voice, hoarse from the cassette tape, said, "Tommy, today we're riding horses in the Mexican sun. Remember, you're learning to walk. Don't be lazy, okay?" Tommy grew up and went to college on a scholarship funded by Duke. He majored in mechanical engineering and began designing simple leg supports for children with disabilities. The first time Tommy presented his idea to a group of doctors, Duke sat in the back row, dressed discreetly, and applauded loudly. There was a moment of great challenge. Margaret fell seriously ill. Tommy panicked, wanting to drop out of school to care for his mother. Duke flew back immediately, despite being in the middle of filming. "Son, I'll take care of her. You have to study. That's the best way you can repay me." He stayed at the hospital with Margaret, telling jokes to distract her from her pain. When she recovered, the 3 of them gathered at their Arizona ranch, barbecuing and stargazing. Duke shared with Tommy about his real family. 7 children, the pressures of fatherhood. "I'm not perfect, but I try, and you've helped me become a better person." Their friendship helped Duke balance his life. He drank less, spent more time with his children, and began other quiet charitable activities. By 1967, Tommy Harlan was already a talented young engineer. He established a small factory manufacturing assistive devices for disabled people, with initial investment from John Wayne. Duke proudly boasted to his friends in the Rat Pack, "That boy can't just walk. He's helping hundreds of other people." They attend charity events together, although Duke always avoids the cameras. Once, at an MDA gala, a fictional collaboration with Dean Martin, Tommy stood up and said, "I'm here today thanks to an unsung hero. He doesn't need a cape, just a heart and strong hands." Duke sat in the auditorium, eyes sparkling with tears. Duke continued his career with True Grit, winning an Oscar in 1970. In his extended fictional acceptance speech, he tactfully reminded, "I dedicate this award to those who taught me that real strength is helping others get up." Tommy knew he was talking about him. Years later, even though Duke's health declined due to cancer, he still maintained contact. Tommy got married and had his first son named John. Duke held the baby on the farm. "Grandson, this is your future grandfather. Remember to tell him about kindness." They walked together on Route 66. Duke was weaker now, but still laughed loudly. "My life is not in vain because I have you." In June 1979, John Wayne died in Los Angeles after a long battle with illness. Tommy Harlan, then a healthy 36-year-old father of two, stood by his grave at Pacific View Cemetery, the sea breeze blowing gently. Beside him were his elderly mother, Margaret, and his family. Tommy held a bouquet of wildflowers from his Arizona farm, his voice choked with emotion. "Duke, you didn't just save my legs. You saved my soul. You taught me how to stand up, how to help others, and how to live with quiet compassion. Your legacy isn't just movies, but lives that have been changed." Hundreds of disabled people Tommy had helped over the years were also present. The story of the wheelchair at the premiere was recounted as a heartwarming Hollywood legend. Tommy's son grew up with stories of John Wayne, not just a star, but a true hero. Years later, as Tommy grew older, he sat on his porch overlooking the Arizona desert, telling his grandson, "Your grandfather used to be in a wheelchair. Then a big man named Duke changed everything. Remember, son, a small act can change a life forever." The story concludes with the image of John Wayne in memory. Tall, smiling, riding a horse across the red desert, a symbol of strength, courage, and humanity. The premier lights of yesteryear have faded, but the flame of compassion he ignited continues to burn brightly through generations.